everyone. I'm going to cover a few things, and I'm going to piggyback off of what you were talking about. But first I want to talk about the Teenage Republican Convention. This week, we received $6,000 from a fundraiser we held in Miami. So we're forwarding a conservative cause. And we just got confirmation from Jeb Bush Jr.'s people that he will be one of our keynote speakers at the convention this summer. And also Shannon Day, co-chair of the RNC, will also be speaking. So we have a great group of speakers along with Governor Scott, and we'll have representatives from the college Republicans there to sort of help high school students who are graduating, let them know what the college experience is like and how they can get into college Republican groups. And now I'm going to transfer into the youth because there is a huge ignorance problem when it comes to knowing things in the media. We have all this social media, and yet people are still clueless about the very things going on in their own country. I was talking to a girl at school, and she knows I'm political, and she asked what was going on in the world. And I said, well, we're funding Al-Qaeda in Syria. That's what the rebels are. And she said, what's Al-Qaeda? I went, good grief! It's the people we've been fighting for the past 8 years. It's the terrorist organization that took down the World Trade Center. She went, oh, I guess it wasn't that much of a big deal. And I'll ride the bus with some kids and they'll ask me the same thing, what's going on in the world? And I said, well, we're finally learning about the Benghazi attacks. Who's Benghazi? There is so much social media out there. There's so many ways people can gain knowledge. We've advanced so far in our human journey, and yet we don't know what's going on 2 feet away from us. We don't know what's going on in Washington, D.C. We have become a society of complacency. All right, we've become a society of complacency. We always are complaining, man, those corrupt politicians, what are you going to do? And they're the people we vote for. 53% of the country, as we learned in the election, is okay with corruption. I mean, just about every person says, if you ask them, is your government money getting wasted? They'd say, yeah. And yet, whenever a congressman is elected, they're re-elected, they're almost guaranteed re-election every single time, even though everyone knows they're doing a pretty awful job. So we, as a group, have a lot of educating to do. Now, speaking of education, we have a huge education problem in our country when it comes to our schools. I printed out some excerpts in one of my history books, and it was distinguishing the differences between liberals and conservatives. You're going to chuckle when I tell you what they think about liberals and conservatives. The conservative order. The conservative order is based on tradition and social stability. They believe that organized religion is crucial to the order in society. They are against revolutions and unwilling to accept the demands from people who either want individual rights or representative governments. Interesting. And now, I also want to tell you, this is at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution that this part of the book takes place, but the thing is, it doesn't distinguish the differences between a modern liberal and a classical liberal. Because if we were talking about classical liberalism, which, right, Jerry, is what our founding fathers are considering, then that'd be a completely different story, where they're just marked liberals and conservatives. Thus, you have to imagine that they're trying to put this with the modern connotation. And liberalism believe that all freedoms should be guaranteed by a written document such as the Bill of Rights. Now, what were they what was that pesky right they were trying to get rid of a few weeks ago? The Second Amendment, right? So they obviously aren't that concerned about protecting individual rights. And they're also demanding the right of peaceful opposition. Now, we haven't seen too much peaceful opposition from this group in quite some time. What was that group, the Wall Street group? That was Occupy? They weren't very peaceful. And we also have a qualification problem. Our teacher at Lakeland High School, coach of the basketball team, blindly accepted something I was wrong about in history. We were talking about World War II. And the Philippines was a territory of ours during the war. Well, I put a few things together and assumed on my own that we were in the Philippines because we were protecting them from the Japanese. Not the case. We won in the Spanish-American War. But I presented that notion to the class, and my history teacher bought it full fold. Taught it the next day. And I went home and I talked to my dad and we looked it up. It wasn't because we were protecting them from the Japanese, it was the Spanish-American War. And I turned to my dad and I said, so a college-educated history teacher just bought a history lesson from a 15-year-old. That tells you about the type of education your kids are getting all around the country. So it's pretty scary what's going on, and the only way we're going to fix this is if we take it outside of this room every Thursday. It can't just be here, and that's why I'm doing the work I'm trying to do with Leslie starting a youth group, so we can further this knowledge. In the past few months, I've been a regular guest on a radio show called The Marshall Polston Show, and Marshall Polston, and he's a young conservative like me, and he's had me on several times. One time we talked about immigration. I just sort of wanted to simplify it for viewers. Would you let someone in your house live on your sofa and eat your food without paying or asking them to leave? Of course not. You wouldn't let someone do that. And every day we're letting people trample over us. Their children are going to our schools. They're benefiting from our economic growth. So we have a huge immigration problem, and it's not being properly addressed. Now, I also went on a few weeks ago and talked about the gay marriage debate. And I know, I remember from a few weeks ago, I learned how a lot of you felt about that. And we do a prayer every week. So I know, for the most part, we're all God-fearing, as the president said, Bible-clenching people. And so I went on there just to talk about the constitutionality of it. And I came to the conclusion that, as much as I disagree with it, technically you could say, hypothetically speaking, it's a 10th Amendment Act, and you could say that each state has the right to recognize it or not. But then you also have to think about, where's the line between a religious ceremony and a contract between two people? Because we haven't come to that conclusion when it comes to marriage. Because if it's just strictly a religious ceremony, then the government has no part in it, because then that would be violating our First Amendment right to freedom of religion. Something to think about. And in our, sadly what's becoming our secular society, you could argue that marriage technically isn't important because you can do everything you need to outside of the the contract of a marriage. Two people can own a house together, sign off on a car. The only thing you wouldn't get is tax exemption and Social Security, which I also believe is a Ponzi scheme for the government to get more of your hard-earned money, but that's besides the point. But why is it such a huge argument? Don't we have more important things to be worrying about, like what's going to be $18 trillion debt? Man, I remember waking up yesterday thinking, what are we going to do with that $16 trillion debt? Each day it sort of seems like it's just going up and no one in Capitol Hill is concerned. And once again, the 47 and 53%, somewhere along the way in our passion, we failed to garner a mere 4%. Somewhere along the line, they didn't trust that the principles that our country was founding on and saw our country to its best days still work. Which is why I'm really looking forward to building a successful youth group with Leslie, and I'm even more looking forward to the support we're going to get from you and the support that you're going to give the conservative movement in 2014 when Governor Scott's up for re-election, when Mike LaRosa's up for re-election, when all these conservatives are going up for re-election and we could possibly try to take back the Senate. And I hear a lot of you maybe do a little, like that'll happen, chuckle, but it's only going to happen if we want it to happen. If we want it dearly enough, if we're willing to spend the amount of time and tell people about it, tell your grandkids, tell high school students they can get volunteer hours, because I know a lot of them want to go to good universities. A lot of them want to have successful futures, and many colleges are looking for, what are you doing to help your community? Well, right there, not only helping your community, but you're shaping the future of your country. That's pretty impressive. So it's something that we can all work on together if we're really willing, as Tracy Garcia, the chairwoman of the Polk County Republican Party, says, if we're willing to strap on our boots and get in the mud again, because 2014 is right around the corner. And we can't afford more losses than we already did in 2012. But I believe, looking at this group of courageous and willing people, I know you're going to be more than ready in 2014 to strap on your work boots and get out there, kick butt, take names. Thank you.